These are my favourite things about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom has been out for just over a week now, and it is the only thing that I have played since it's come out. I'm really enjoying it. It's been great to dive back into a Zelda game, and to be honest, I think with all of the changes that they've made, I think I like Tears of the Kingdom even more than I enjoyed Breath of the Wild. I did a video last week talking about my first impressions, but I've played even more now. I've probably played about 15 hours, maybe 20, something like that. And so I wanted to talk about the things that I like the most about the game. Just a quick warning for this one, there will be spoilers. I did a spoiler-free video last week, but this one there will be spoilers. The point where I'm at, I've gone to the Rito village and I've also gone to the Zora domain. So those are the areas where there will potentially be some spoilers. So if you've already done those, then you've got nothing to worry about. If you haven't done those, then just wanted to let you know that there might be some spoilers for you. Before we start though, are you enjoying Tears of the Kingdom as well? If so, then do let me know down in the comments and we'll see what area everybody likes the most. So the first area that I want to talk about today is the story. I'm really enjoying the story of Tears of the Kingdom, which is not really something that I expected to say, you know, given that Breath of the Wild didn't have a huge focus on story. Tears of the Kingdom though has definitely increased the focus on storytelling and on presentation. Right from the start, when you're walking under the castle with Zelda, I was already interested. I wanted to know what was going on. It was quite creepy. Zelda found those ruins. It was interesting in a different way to Breath of the Wild. In Breath of the Wild, you wake up and sure, you're interested in why you're there and things like that, but the way Tears of the Kingdom starts, especially when you progress further and you see Ganon and everything starts to go wrong from there, it just has me hooked much more completely than Breath of the Wild did. And now that I've been playing more, I've unlocked more bits and pieces. I'm really interested to know what's going on. You're recruiting these sages to help you in a final battle. There's something weird going on with Zelda. She's not around. She's been appearing in cutscenes from the past. People have been describing her as the Sage of Time. But also at the same time, she's done some weird things. When you go to the Zora domain, supposedly Zelda appeared and brought forth a monster to attack the king there. I'm way more interested in this than I am in the Breath of the Wild story. And I also think that part of that is to do with the fact that there seem to be way more cutscenes and there is voice acting in this game. I know that some people can't stand watching cutscenes, but I do like them. I like the way they used to tell story, and voice acting is always a plus. Unless it's really bad voice acting, then I always think that having the characters voiced helps you get immersed in the world and the story more. And all of these things combined just mean I'm really enjoying this story. I also really like the Dragon's Tears. They are similar to the photographs from the first game, but it's really cool to see these etchings in the ground when you're floating in the sky, and then to try and find where the tear is. And once you do, then you get a cutscene from the past. And honestly, some of these cutscenes are really cool. I've only found a few so far, but I really enjoyed them. I'm just going to show a very quick clip from the first one I found. And the first one, I think, it sort of like hits hard. And it also gives you some insight into Ganondorf, which I wasn't expecting as well. You know, at the end he sort of says, so brute force won't work. That shows him as more cold and calculating, whereas in the first game, Calamity Ganon, you just sort of saw as this brute force power. But yeah, like I said, overall I'm just really into the story of this game. It's one of my favorite things about it, and I wasn't expecting it. Okay, moving on. The second area that I want to talk about is the new mechanics. And as much as I like the story, and story is my thing, the new mechanics are really fun, and I think the new mechanics are really, you know, what Tears of the Kingdom's legacy is going to be. In Breath of the Wild, you had people finding out new little interactions for years and years after the game came out, and I think that because of these new mechanics, Tears of the Kingdom is going to be the same. You can interact with anything using these new mechanics. You can basically do anything that you want. The building system is much more in-depth than I imagined. I don't know if that's the same for everybody else, but it's really good. The 4 new mechanics, Ultra Hand, Fuse, Ascend and Recall, they all combine together in some incredible ways. And while originally I didn't necessarily think I would use them all loads, I am actually using all of them more than I kind of thought I would. And the really good thing about these mechanics is that in combination you can basically attempt to do anything in any way that you want. If you want to get across a river, you can swim, you know, that's the normal way to do it. That's the way you would have had to do it in Breath of the Wild. Or, you know, there's usually building materials nearby, you can make a boat. Or, you know, using fuse, for example, if you have a rocket nearby, you can fuse a rocket to your shield, shoot yourself up into the air and then glide across. There's just so many ways to do everything Fuse is really interesting as well. That was one that I wasn't sure I would use. As I've started to kill more and more trickier monsters, and I've been finding new monster components and seeing how they fuse with different weapons, I am actually really quite into it. I didn't think I would be, but yeah, it's quite fun to do that and to try and build up some really powerful weapons if you can, and weapons with different effects as well. You do have components that sort of just give straight damage upgrades, but you also have loads of components that give different effects as well. And it's really interesting to find out what each one will do. I do think Ascend is probably one of the most useful ones though. It kind of feels like you can use it to skip loads of different stuff that maybe the developers didn't quite intend. The only downside I have with Ascend is that sometimes I forget to use it. Sometimes when we're trying to figure out a puzzle or something like that, I'll be looking around for ages trying to work out how to do it. I'll even see that there's something above me and I'll be like, oh, how do I get up there? And I'll forget to use Ascend, and it won't be for ages that I'll figure it out and I'll realise what I've done. Next point then, and I want to talk about the World of Hyrule, and on the other side, the changes that they've made to Hyrule. I think that Hyrule feels more alive in Tears of the Kingdom than it does in Breath of the Wild. And I guess that makes sense. It's definitely a few years after the events of Breath of the Wild, and so people have sort of started to rebuild civilization. You know, the world isn't really on the edge of destruction anymore. And so the fact that there are these new towns and settlements and things like that, yeah, it makes sense. Up until the point of the upheaval, anyway, it makes sense that people have been trying to rebuild and there are more NPCs around. But I just really like that. It does make it feel less lonely, I guess. Breath of the Wild, you could sort of walk around for ages and not see anybody, and you can still do that in Tears of the Kingdom, but also that you do have more chances to bump into people, and you can go to settlements where there are a lot of people, and they're really interesting to talk to, and I just like that in the game. You know, it makes the world feel more lived in and more alive. But then also, it's so easy to get distracted. I get distracted all the time in this game. It's crazy. I've only done 2 key story points. You know, I've gone to the Rito village and I've gone to the Zora domain, and that's it. I think if I just made a beeline right there, I could have probably done all 4 of the first plot points by now. But it's just so easy to get distracted. They seem to have packed more things to do into this world than they did with Breath of the Wild. There's cave systems, that's brand new, that's really interesting. Just to give you an example of how easy it is to get distracted, I was trying to make my way across to one of the new sightseeing towers, and I teleported back to a base just because I'd got 4 motes, so I went to get a new heart container. And while I was doing that, I sort of noticed a new area which led to a tunnel, and in that tunnel there were just loads of rocks that needed breaking. And so I got curious and I set about doing that, and that led to more of a tunnel, which led to more rocks, which led to more tunnel. There were bad guys in there, the tunnel sort of went under some structures, and I probably got distracted from my main objective for, I don't know, 45 minutes or an hour, just because I was curious to see where these tunnels led. And it's so easy to do that. Things like that are happening all the time in this game. It really is a giant sandbox playground, and I think most of the time will be spent not on the story. It is a harder game though, for sure. I've died quite a few times, especially when I wasn't expecting it. You can upgrade your weapons fairly easily using Fuse, you know, putting some strong materials on your weapons. You can do a lot of damage, but I actually haven't found any great fairies yet to upgrade my armor, and I do have some more heart containers now than when I started, but still, sometimes the enemies will do quite a lot of damage in one hit. You know, they'll take out half or maybe 3/4 of my health sometimes in one shot, so I've definitely died more than I think I did in Breath of the Wild, but at the same time, the sort of resume points are really good. You basically just seem to respawn something like 5 meters away from where you died, and most of your progress is there. You just probably have to fight the monsters that you were fighting already. So while I have died a lot, it's never really felt like I've lost loads, so it's not too frustrating, but it's definitely harder. There's more of a challenge there, I think, for sure. Moving on then to point number 4, and this is the puzzles. I really think the puzzles in this game are really done very well. I did think that in Breath of the Wild as well, but in my head, and it has been a while since I've played, in my head, there were more repeated puzzles in Breath of the Wild. I think especially in the shrines, there were more repeated puzzles, and I think I recall not liking that so much. In Tears of the Kingdom though, I'm not sure I've come across a single repeating puzzle yet. There are so many unique ones, and even combat challenges in this game are different. They're more about teaching you specific ways of fighting rather than just can you brute force your way through that, and I really appreciate that. I think variety is always good, and there's a lot of variety in these puzzles. But not only are the puzzles really varied, they're also very good at teaching you things. The shrines will have increasingly different stages to them, which will teach you different ways to use different mechanics, or maybe different Zonai devices, or, you know, the new fuse ability, or maybe Ultra Hand, it'll teach you about that. And not only that, it'll teach you how to use these things outside as well. I don't have any footage of this, but an early shrine I did was all about the fans, right? And it taught you to put fans on objects, but also you could just put them on the ground and activate them, and then you could glide up and that you could get some height that way. I came out of the shrine, and next to it there was sort of a bit of rock sticking up, and there were thorns around the rock, so you couldn't climb up it, but there was a chest on there, and there happened to be some fans nearby. And I remember seeing those on the way in, but not really figuring out how to get up there. But once I'd done the shrine and I'd realized you could just put fans on the floor and then you could gust upwards and glide, then it immediately taught me how to get that chest. And I've been able to use that further in the game, you know, on all sorts of things. And honestly, I think whoever designed these just deserves all the awards, because it's so clever the way that they teach you these things. They don't specifically say, do this to achieve this objective. Instead, they lead you on very gently. They sort of get you to figure out these things on your own. It's really clever, it's really engaging the way they do it, and I really, really appreciate it. Plus, like I said before, there is a way that they usually have in mind that you complete puzzles, but you can usually break them and you can attempt them in any way you want. Similar to, like I said, about how crossing a river has many different ways you can do it. A lot of these puzzles, you do it the way they want, or you just figure out another way to do it, and that's absolutely fine, and they're happy for you to do that. And it's part of the fun, just figuring out a different way to do it if that's what you want to do. Okay, so the last point now that I want to talk about is the bosses and the dungeons, and sort of the areas leading up to these bosses, because I think they're really, really good in this game. In Breath of the Wild, the bosses were very similar, you know, they did have some differences, but on the whole, I found them quite similar. They weren't very interesting to do. In Tears of the Kingdom, I think this is not the same at all. I've done two bosses so far, the one in the Zora domain and the one that's above Rito Village. The one in the Zora domain was quite interesting. It was unique, it wasn't the most fun in the world, but it was definitely different, I will say that. But the one above Rito Village was absolutely incredible. I really, really enjoyed it. I don't have any footage of it, I wish I did, but you're in the sky, you know, you're having to balance floating and falling and flying and shooting arrows at the same time and landing on this beast and, you know, breaking different pieces. It was just so fun. One of my favorite bosses of all time is Leviathan from Final Fantasy 15. So just the feeling of flying around and you suddenly become ultra powerful in that, and you zoom around all over the place and take on this great flying beast. You don't become ultra powerful in Tears of the Kingdom, but you are flying around taking on this great beast, and it just elicited very similar feelings for me, and I really, really loved it. I'm excited to do more bosses because of that boss, and I wish I could replay it. I wish there was a way I could go back and just do it again. If you haven't done it yet, I would go and do it, because honestly it's great, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I did. But then also they make some really interesting mechanics leading up to bosses too. So the one that's above Rito Village, they're in the sky, right? And to get there, first of all you climb up the mountain, you're sort of gliding around these floating sky islands, right? You're trying to reach the goal. And then partway through there are all these ships that are floating around, and they have almost like trampolines. The sails are almost like trampolines, and you jump on them and then it launches you up, and then you have to glide to the next one, land on it, you get launched up, and you glide around again. And that was really fun, actually. I really enjoyed that. And something similar happened for the boss leading up to the Zora domain as well. You'd unlocked the Zora armor by this point, which means that you could go up waterfalls. And again, there were all these sky islands, but they had waterfalls running off them, and so you glided into the waterfall, you zoomed up the waterfall, burst out from the top, and then glided on to get to another one, into the waterfall again, zoomed up, burst out, and off you go, and that's how you sort of climbed up these sky islands. And I just really, really enjoyed that, and it's very unique. You know, I don't remember playing anything like that in a game for a long time, maybe ever. It was just fun, you know, I just had a really good time doing it. I was playing it on the TV, there were people in the room at the same time, and I was saying to them, look how cool this is, like this is really fun to do. And I'm really excited to see what other things they've come up with for the other two areas. I'm really hoping I haven't already done the best two and that it's sort of like downhill from here. I'm hoping there are some more interesting mechanics. I just really enjoyed it, I think, to be honest. It's just one of my favorite things about Tears of the Kingdom. So there we go, I've been really enjoying Tears of the Kingdom, and I wanted to do another video about it. I don't normally do two videos in a row about the same topic, but I'm just enjoying Tears of the Kingdom so much, I really wanted to talk about it some more and talk about all the areas that I enjoyed rather than just limiting it to the spoiler-free section. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.